This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
We just had the first round of the college football playoff rankings released last night, which means we are officially into the run-up to the college football playoffs for the 2025 season. Today, we're going to break down week 11 across the nation, digging into some key matchups that could dictate who one's going to those playoffs by talking to Dr. Ed Feng, getting his read on key games and his favorite bets at FanDuel Sportsbook. Welcome on into Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is JimSannes. I am a managing editor for FanDuel Research, joined here as mentioned by Dr. Ed Feng. You can find his work at The Power Rank on X. He is at thepowerrank.com as well. Check out the Football Analytics Show podcast. Ed, we are into week 11. It is college basketball season as well. How are you doing today?
Doing great. You know, it's just all the craziness of football season just continues. Trying to do college football and NFL here. It's always a challenge, but it's always a lot of fun too.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun. Very busy time of year for you. I got to go to the KU basketball game on Monday at Allen Fieldhouse, my first time being there. So I'm officially more in the college basketball spirit than I ever am in November.
Yeah,
so
of course.
It's a good time of year.
Living in Lawrence, Kansas, I mean, you can't avoid it, right?
I cannot avoid it, and was lucky to be there for Darren Peterson's first game. So it's a fun time for sure. So we'll get you in the mix, talk some college basketball once we turn the calendar towards 2026 as well. But for today, a lot of good college football stuff to discuss. Last time we had Ed on, he talked about a college football player prop model I'm working on. So I wanted to dig into Ed, kind of check out some learnings from that. Then we'll dig into some key games for this week: BYU, Texas Tech, Texas A&M, Mizzou, Indiana, Penn State, and then get Ed's favorite bets for this week. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to the Covering the Spread podcast feed and FanDuel Football Betting YouTube page. On that FanDuel Football Betting YouTube page and the podcast feed, you can find my breakdown of every NFL Week 10 game from a spread and total perspective, laid out my predictions there, and favorite bets at FanDuel Sportsbook. Tomorrow, Minty Betts will join me to break down her thoughts on NFL Week 10, NFL player props coming your way Friday with Liv Moods, all right here on the FanDuel Football Betting YouTube page and Covering the Spread podcast feed. Subscribe there, 5-star rating on the podcast feed, or a thumbs up on YouTube, and turn on notifications on YouTube as well. The race to the NFL playoffs is on, and if you're betting on FanDuel this season, here are some things to keep in mind. Number one, celebrate your wins responsibly when your bet hits. It's important to never leave a high five hanging. That's just good sportsmanship. Number two, no kickoff, no problem. Live betting means you're free to jump into the game anytime. And number three, if you're a new customer, bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. And now you're ready to play your game on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in DC, Kentucky, or Wyoming. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel or rg-help.com. Call 1-888-79-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050. For 24/7 support in Massachusetts, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Now, Ed, let's dive into that college football player prop model. You'd mentioned that you have a rushing prop projection you've been working on over the Power Rank. So I've built out a lot of models in my life, and I always find talking to people who have built those out fascinating because I can learn a lot of stuff from them and their learning. So what to you was your biggest learning from building those projections out?
Right. So what happens in this model is that, over the last couple of years in both NFL and in college football, I've started making things more player specific. So that started with the NFL with quarterbacks. Like all my passing success rate and yards per pass attempt is dependent on quarterback and not just the team, because, there's kind of a difference between Joe Burrow and Jake Browning. So started doing that with NFL a couple years ago, and then started applying it to college football over the last offseason. I don't remember if I might have had some of these numbers at the end of last season, but so quarterback specific college football numbers, which have been useful. And we'll talk a little bit about that later with Penn State, Drew Aller and his backup. But Yeah. So, anyways, I mean, given that I can take yards per pass attempt and adjust for strength of schedule, how can I use that to bet some player props? And for college football, it just ends up being a little bit easier to look at the running backs because you don't have to project out pass attempts. So I started doing things with running backs as well. And, the NFL is nice. You can just kind of take the market value for pass attempts. It's a little bit harder in college football. So anyways, I've been doing stuff with running backs. So taking their adjusted yards per carry, looking at the opposing defenses, making a prediction. And I guess I have to make a reasonable guess for how many attempts that they're going to get, which honestly doesn't really end up being too hard for a lot of these top running backs. Yeah, it's interesting. I've actually not come up with a lot of bets. I had a plan to put some in the newsletter, and just last week and couldn't come up with anything. The only one that the model really liked was King Miller of USC over Nebraska, and that's because Nebraska's rush defense is just complete trash. But King Miller is a backup. We don't have a ton of data on him, right? Just a couple of games. So when it says he's going to get 130 yards, there's a little bit of small sample size in there. So yeah, it's been kind of interesting. I actually have a better model, and have been betting fewer college football player props this year. Part of that is not just the model; it's just time. But I think, at least this past week, it was pretty easy to set these numbers, I guess. I don't know. There's, this model is going to be good at finding out, an over against a really bad rushing team or some unders against Georgia. I had Lacey, the running back at Ole Miss, under against Georgia a couple weeks ago. That hit. That was pretty nice. But I think people are on to the fact that Georgia's rush defense is pretty good and the pass defense is not. So, it's been an interesting thing where I've actually had less plays lately.
Yeah.
And part of that is I've been spending my time elsewhere as well.
Sure.
But still, it's always good to have a model. It might be the case that the market's pretty efficient and the model is telling you that.
And I think that's a good learning too. Learning that the market is efficient is a good takeaway as well. And it can tell you that, hey, maybe I want to focus elsewhere.
True. I don't think that's a solid conclusion.
Yeah.
So just one particular week, but that's a potential conclusion from this.
All right. Well, we'll keep tabs on that for sure, because I think that's a fun process to go through, and looking forward to hearing more about that as the season goes along. Let's dig in now to some games across week number 11, beginning with a big one out in Texas. It is BYU taking on Texas Tech right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. Tech is favored by 10.5. Total in this game is 52.5. Now, BYU still undefeated, but enters this game as big underdogs. So, Ed, can BYU keep this one close enough to cover, or does the magical season come to an end?
Yeah, I mean, look, the magical season probably comes to an end. BYU has been good. Actually, kind of a nice surprise after their starting quarterback left over the offseason for premarital sex, I think, against the honor code at BYU.
Was that listed on the injury report? How they put the injury in parentheses, like ankle? Was it premarital sex in parentheses?
I think it was premarital sex in parentheses.
There we go.
That's against the code at BYU, and
the Jamal Williams. Love it.
What?
Jamal Williams got suspended for the same thing back in the day.
Yeah. So he had to leave because he was going to get suspended. But BYU has been really good. They're undefeated. They figured out the quarterback position. But there are some caveats with this BYU team. Last 2 weeks they've beaten Utah and Iowa State. However, they've looked bad in the underlying metrics, fewer total yards, less yards per play in each contest. BYU had a +6 turnover margin combined in these games, which certainly helped in a close win against Utah. And then the margin was bigger against Iowa State, but that was helped by a pick-6 as well. So, BYU is a little bit overrated, and Texas Tech is probably not. They have a single loss against Arizona State. The quarterback, Baron Morton, did not play in that game. And Arizona Sam Leavitt did play in that game. He is now out with an injury. So, look, Texas Tech is significantly the better team here. My best number has this by BYU by about 6.5. Texas Tech by about 7 points. But I think that's really underestimating things because Texas Tech hasn't had Behren Morton for every single game this year. There was an interesting situation. He got hurt in the Utah game, and this was actually one of the huge wins for Texas Tech. Will Hammond came in, and they actually pulled away with Will Hammond in the second half. Will Hammond played really well and had almost 10 yards per pass attempt against what I thought was a really good Utah defense. It turns out that was completely flukish. Hammond was not as good since then. He is now injured, and I think he's done for the season. Morton's back. Morton's numbers look a lot better than last year. And I think the market is right on the money here. Texas Tech by about 10. So BYU can enjoy this week in the top 10 of the college football playoff rankings, but they most likely are not there next week.
All right, so 10.5 sounds like a good number by the market here for BYU versus Texas Tech, and add sees Texas Tech ending BYU's undefeated season. Let's talk now about a big matchup in the SEC. It is Texas A&M taking on Mizzou. Right now at FanDuel Sportsbook, this spread is 6.5 in favor of A&M. This game is at Missouri, and the total of this game is 47.5. Now, A&M has already passed a couple of key tests on the road, got wins against LSU and Notre Dame this year. Ed, can they do enough at Mizzou to cover what is a relatively large spread for a road SEC game?
Yeah, I definitely think they can. Look, Texas A&M is the best team in the SEC in my numbers. They have been excellent this season. They've been excellent on both sides of the ball. Marcel Reed is a Heisman candidate, rightfully so. They have been excellent on offense. And then the defense has really taken a step up as well this season. Last year, Mike Elko's a defensive guy, but the defense was only about 19th when I look at adjusted yards per play last year. They're up to 11th this season. And I think they're even better in my adjusted success rate. So the defense has taken a really big step up. My numbers really love this team. For me, it's a question of figuring out, is it flukish? Is this something that is not sustainable by, a Texas A&M program with a second-year head coach? I believe the answer is it is sustainable. I think they can. Obviously, that remains to be seen with this. And now they go to play Mississippi State. The spread is pretty big, but partially that's because Missouri quarterback Bo Pribilla got hurt last week. They're going to go with the freshman at quarterback this week. So Matt Zollers was pretty good last week. Came in through for about 5.5 yards per pass attempt. That's below the FBS average, but it was a true freshman in his first game there. So my numbers have Texas A&M by about 4.5 points on the road. You have to make an adjustment for the quarterback. The market seems about right in this situation. I think Missouri is going to struggle with the passing game to throw against this Texas A&M defense. They're going to really be reliant on Ahmed Hardy to try to break big plays in the run game. We'll see if they can do it. They are at home, but Texas Tech should be favored. And actually kind of a nice break for them to not face the starting quarterback in this game.
Yeah, and again, they've already been tested plenty, so it's not a situation where they're catching lucky breaks and stuff like that and skating by. They're a pretty legitimate 3 right now in the college football playoff rankings, and like you said, they deserve a little break. So getting a backup for Mizzou, not a bad thing. So I think the market pretty efficient here. A&M minus 6.5 as they take on Mizzou. Let's finish up with a kind of big game in the Big Ten, because every game involving Indiana right now is actually a big game. They are on the road this week taking on Penn State. Right now, FanDuel Sportsbook, spread in this game is 14.5. Total in this game is at 48.5. And Ed, your numbers were on Indiana pretty early. You pinpointed them as being a team that's underrated. You like them. They're taking on Oregon. You like them against Illinois as well. Seems like everyone's caught up now. So has the market finally caught up in valuing Indiana properly, or is there still value in Indiana minus 14.5 at Penn State?
Oh, no. I mean, I feel like the market and people have caught up to this Indiana team. I do want to say, it wasn't necessarily my numbers, especially in the preseason, that this Indiana team. They were 18th, which is certainly underestimating where they were. They have come into the season and they have simply dominated teams in order to get up to second in, my numbers right now. Second, the college football playoff committee has it right. They should be behind Ohio State. But what is interesting to me is that, when I was doing my homework this preseason, they were talking about Fernando Mendoza as a first round NFL pick. And at that point, that was kind of surprising. His numbers at Cal were fine, but nothing that really jumped out, kind of better than FBS average, but nothing to write home about necessarily. And there's this idea that Kirk Cinetti is a quarterback whisperer, and I don't really like that term, but I do acknowledge that some coaches are better working with quarterbacks than others. And so when you start reading that NFL scouts think that this guy is potentially a first round pick, that really kind of caught my eye. And then now, he's kind of the definitive favorite to be the top pick, going to the Jets and probably waste his career away there. But, I don't think there's any doubt that he is not only going to be the top pick, but probably the best quarterback in college football right now, although I think Ohio State fans would disagree. So, look, this Indiana team is fantastic on both sides of the ball. And, this spread is kind of all about, how far Penn State has fallen. Obviously, James Franklin is no longer there. And this is a team that, when you looked at during this preseason, they still have a lot of guys that are going to get drafted in April for the NFL. And when you come into the season, you look at these guys on defense, you have these guys like AJ Harris, the cornerback, and Danny Dennis Sutton, the edge, and a couple other players. You're bringing in a guy like Jim Knowles, who has a very long established track record of being a great coordinator, and you expect really good things from this defense. And it simply just has not happened. They're essentially FBS average when I look at my adjusted yards per play. And it's not because all these guys are hurt. They're not. They're out there playing and watching their draft stock kind of slip. So it's, those guys have a lot to play for. Is this going to be the week that they kind of show up? I don't necessarily think that's the case. My numbers make this Indiana by about 10 on the road, but no way I would bet that. Definitely believe in this Indiana team, and gun to head would probably bet them spread in this game.
Yeah, 14.5 is a big number, but sometimes big numbers are big for a reason. And when you got a quarterback like Mendoza playing as well as he is and legitimizing that preseason hype, that makes it easier to lay a big number as well. So Ed, staying away from Indiana, Penn State. Yeah.
I don't think it was hype. Yeah. I think it was completely on the radar. I think a lot of people, I came into it thinking well, is this guy going to be any good?
Yeah.
Is he going to be the reason that Indiana declines?
Yeah.
And it's been anything but.
Yeah, I had been looking for excuses to bet elsewhere for the first overall pick market. I've nitpicked, he's going to be 22.5 on the first day of the draft, which is a little bit on the older side, but he just keeps making it look stupid. So more power to him. He's been great and should continue to be great. But Ed staying with Indiana versus Penn State. Let's open up the board for you now, Ed. Looking elsewhere across college football, any other bets that stand out to you across week 11?
Yeah, for sure. Not week 11. I've actually really found it difficult to find spread and total bets the last 2 weeks, as members of my site will know. It's just been hard. I hope that changes next week, but we'll see. So to give you some value, I definitely want to go to the totals market. As I mentioned, I have Texas A&M as the best team in the SEC, and I'm trying to think I would make them Alabama's the next best team, and I would make Texas A&M about a 3.5 point favorite in the SEC championship game. So Alabama, opened the season with a loss to Florida State, and that game looks more like an outlier every week. I don't think Florida State is quite as good as that game suggested that they were. Alabama's kind of come along. And is Alabama a good team? Yeah. Ty Simpson is a good quarterback, although I think he's a little overrated in the Heisman conversation right now. But the market is basically pricing the futures for winning the SEC as if these two teams are flipped, as if Alabama would be favored in the SEC game. They may be, but right now my numbers definitely say the opposite. I think there's a ton of value in Texas A&M plus 210 to win the SEC. Using my numbers and the unabated college football futures simulator, I'm giving about a 41% chance that Texas A&M wins the SEC. So I believe in this team. Like I mentioned before, they're really good on both sides of the ball. They are better than Alabama in just about any way I can do it. You can look at the data from this year and adjust for who they played. They're again ahead of Alabama. I kind of wonder if I threw out the first game against Florida State, what that would say. I think it'd be close. But that was a legit game with the same players that they have. So you really should count it. I like Texas A&M plus 210 to win the SEC.
Well, and I know with the way that you've changed your college football model, that week 1 game is still in there, but it gets downplayed more and more as the year goes along because it's been a more quickly to react model. So while that week 1 is still in there, I feel like by this point it's not getting a ton of weight. So I feel like if we were to toss it out entirely, that almost like double count what's already being baked into the model that game doesn't matter as much as other games.
Well, so we're kind of talking about two different things. So my primary model uses every game, tends to react pretty quickly to how things have gone the prior week. You can't really throw the game out there.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is if we did, kind of margin of victory adjusted for strength of schedule.
Right.
Something that looks at kind of averages over the whole season and then throughout the Florida State game, which I don't think is the right thing to do.
Right.
What would we get? And obviously Alabama would go up a little bit. But when you take all the data, I still have Texas A&M ahead of Alabama when you look at it that way as well. So it's not fluky what they've done. The only question is whether they can continue it. And then, look, this is Kalen DeBoer's second year at Alabama. They did not exactly finish things with a bang last year either. Yeah. So.
All right, so Ed is backing A&M to win the SEC, which is currently plus 210 at FanDuel Sportsbook. That is all that we have here for today on Covering the Spread. As mentioned, back again tomorrow, we're going to talk NFL Week 10 with Minty Bets. Get her read on those games. NFL player props coming your way Friday. Get those by subscribing to the Covering the Spread podcast feed and the FanDuel Football Betting YouTube page. Ed, what's going on for you over at the Power Rank this week?
Yeah, I'm always writing my free email newsletter, 5 Nugget Saturdays, my curated list of tips for anyone who's looking for something to bet on for any given weekend. So check that out at thepowerrank.com. I've also been posting daily minute videos on social media. So my latest one was the most overrated team in the first college football playoff rankings. Check them out on X, YouTube, TikTok. And that's all I've got so far. Just those 3 platforms right now.
This makes me very, very happy. But again, find Ed's work, thepowerrank.com there. I'll check it on TikTok if I ever decide to sign up, which I have not done yet, but you'll be the first person I follow if I do.
That sounds good. They actually kill like the betting videos.
Yeah.
Like very silently. They just like you hit post and they just disappear. Apparently betting is not okay with the Chinese ownership there, but I kind of figured out some ways around it. So a lot of them have been going up. So we'll see what happens in the future.
Well, I'll give you a follow to boost those numbers too. Again, find Ed on X at the Power Rank, thepowerrank.com for the newsletter and the Football Analytics Show podcast. I'm on X and Blue Sky at JimSannes, on Threads at Jim.Sannes. You can find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Big thank you to our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for his work on the video side of things. Thank you, Justin, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with your Week 11 college football bets. Back again tomorrow for some more NFL. This has been Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast.